They never saw the enemy. No charging horses, no clashing swords, no catapults breaking walls. Only silence and the slow death that followed. It began with the grain, then the water turned foul, then came the rats. Within months, the once proud kingdom, nestled between stone mountains and an endless sea, began to rot from the inside. The king still ruled, but over skeletons. And by the time he realized the truth, it was already too late. This was not a war of blood. It was a war of patience, of shadows. A siege so secret, so carefully orchestrated, that most history books don't even mention it. A war that didn't need a single battle to end an entire civilization. This is the story of the silent siege, the one that starved a kingdom to death. It began in the early spring of 1307, in the eastern reaches of the Mediterranean. The kingdom of Arsalan had stood for over 2 centuries, a jewel of trade and culture, guarded by jagged cliffs and an impenetrable fortress city. Its walls had never been breached, not by the Saracens, not by the Mongols, not even by the Crusaders. But what no one realized was this: walls can keep soldiers out. They cannot keep famine in. Outside those walls, watching, waiting, was a man named General Harun al-Kafi, the hidden falcon. He was a tactician unlike any other, trained in the old Persian schools of war and deception. His army was small, too small to storm a city like Arsalan, but Harun had no intention of storming anything. Instead, he vanished. Literally. The scouts reported nothing. Trade caravans came and went, seemingly undisturbed. But little by little, changes began to happen. The wheat stopped arriving from the southern plains. The fishing boats were intercepted mysteriously, far from shore. Merchant ships went missing at sea. The kingdom's external food supplies quietly disappeared. The royal court didn't panic at first. Arsalan had stores, granaries full, wells deep. They had prepared for war, just not this one. Because the siege was invisible. Harun's men did not surround the city. They blended into the surrounding villages. They posed as traders, fishermen, shepherds. They poisoned wells along the outer trade roads. They bribed or slaughtered grain suppliers. And slowly, without ever drawing a sword in sight of the city, they began to choke the kingdom into stillness. It wasn't until late summer that the effects became undeniable. Bread grew scarce. Riots began in the outer districts. Horses were eaten, then dogs, then rats. By autumn, the royal court began issuing decrees. Rationing, execution for hoarding, curfews. But the people were already dying. The king, Emir Selim II, was a proud man. Arrogant, many said. He believed the city could hold out until reinforcements from the Western allies arrived. He sent pigeons, messengers, pleas. None of them made it past Harun's silent curtain. By winter, the snows came, and with them disease. Corpses lay frozen in alleyways. Mothers offered their children for sacks of grain. There are records, horrific records, of what was sold in the black markets beneath the palace. Meat with no name, salted flesh with no origin. Meanwhile, Harun waited. He never once approached the city walls. Never once showed his army. He simply let time do his killing. What no one knew, what no one in Arsalan could even imagine, was that Harun's strategy had been years in the making. He had agents in the city, paid servants in the palace. He had corrupted the very grain keepers of Arsalan. Some of the kingdom's food stores were laced with slow-acting toxins, designed not to kill immediately, but to weaken, to confuse. Even the king's own meals were not untouched. By the time spring returned, Arsalan was a graveyard. The king had ordered mass executions of suspected traitors. But there were no trials, no confessions, only desperation. His own wife was hanged after being accused of hoarding water for their children. She had none. And then, in the 4th month of the second spring, Harun made his move. He didn't send an army. He sent a caravan. One by one, carts filled with grain, clean water, salt, and honey appeared outside the city's southern gate. The gatekeepers, sick, starved, hallucinating, opened the doors, and like that, Arsalan fell. Not to fire, not to steel, but to mercy. What Harun offered the survivors was food. and in return absolute submission. The crown was taken, the palace stripped, the archives burned. But the worst, the kingdom wasn't destroyed, it was consumed. Within 5 years, the name Arsalan disappeared from maps. The children were raised speaking Haroun's language. The markets adopted his coin, the history rewritten. The siege had erased not just a people but a memory. There was no glory, no songs, no battle scars to show, only an empty throne, and a war no one could remember losing. Historians debate to this day whether the Siege of Arsalan was real. There are fragments, letters from merchants, broken records from monasteries, oral tales whispered in eastern Anatolia. But there is no official account, and maybe that's exactly what Haroun intended, to conquer, and then to erase. Because in the end, the most terrifying weapon of war isn't the sword, the cannon, or the siege tower. It's silence.